Do you think there's a limit to the number of times like one share can be used in this way?
The only limit, in economics is the dismal science, because economics is the language of constraints. So economics, we talk about goods are, by definition, goods are scarce. There is a supply curve, and the scarcity of goods imbues them with value. Our securities markets, on the other hand, are built upon the notion that whatever the paper number of shares outstanding is, the denominator on paper, that determines the value of the security. And any trading that happens subsequently is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter. I guess the answer to your question is theoretically no, and theoretically the regulators don't care, because the efficient market hypothesis tells them it doesn't matter. The same pot of securities can be lent, but that doesn't affect the denominator in the math equation. The market's going to discover the fair price of the asset anyway, regardless of how much trading happens on a daily basis. That's their defense. I don't necessarily believe that, but that's the defense that they must.
It's such a silly defense, right? Because like the market value, the price discovery mechanism is based on supply and demand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it also assumes that there's no feedback. As Soros, the most famous, one of the most famous traders in history, would say, markets are reflexive. There are feedback effects. He built his entire career as a trader on the reflexivity of markets. There is certainly a reflexive effect. If you can just push the price around in the short term, that has a feedback effect upon the demand function for these assets, and that's certainly what happened in the case of a lot of these threshold securities.
Yeah, we've actually pointed out to regulators in the past that often, especially in the rule proposals, they fail to account for reflexivity in markets.
Oh yeah,
right.
Good for you. You should cite Soros's book. That would be.
I guess so. Yeah.
Well, by that logic, why would we not just allow counterfeit money to circulate? I mean, wouldn't that logic apply the same to the dollar? We've only issued so many dollars. That logic doesn't apply anywhere else. So why does it apply here?
Well, that's a very interesting. By the way, I'm saying this to you now because I was at a meeting at the SEC across the table from their chief economist, who pulled me out of after the meeting. We had gone into the meeting to say there's all this naked short selling happening. There are hundreds of companies on the threshold list. They've been on for hundreds of days. And he pulled me aside afterward and said to me, naked short selling doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much trading happens in these securities, as long as the number of shares, the denominator doesn't change, shares issued and outstanding, the market price is fair.
What a crazy thing. I mean, what does it matter that the shares outstanding hasn't changed if the shares that are trading are
no, it is a bizarre argument in that, but this is where ideology and perhaps, I honestly don't know if he really believed it. Maybe at the time he really did believe it. He since left the SEC and went into private practice representing the firms that he was regulating as an economist in private practice. So I don't know if he really believed it or not. I think what the SEC honestly believes is that, first of all, these are corner cases. As I said to you all last time, I was at a meeting at the SEC with a very senior person who said we don't regulate for the corner cases. Right. They really believe these are corner cases. They also, and this is also true, they believe that there aren't enough short sellers helping them uncover frauds in the market. They sort of see these short sellers as bounty hunters assisting them. A lot of this is the thought that came after the Enron, Jim Chanos days. Chanos was hailed as a hero. Yeah. He and Bethany McLean for having broken the Enron story. And so the SEC thought that they were simply outmatched and they needed short sellers out there uncovering all the frauds that are happening, like Netflix and Chipotle. Oh my God, these terrible frauds. They should be on the threshold list for hundreds of days. These terrible companies that nobody uses today.
Yeah, John sent over some data before this, and we'll maybe if we've got it handy, we'll throw some of this data up. But you looked at historical threshold list appearances and Absolutely. How many days some stocks have been on threshold, and maybe I should say how many years some stocks have been on the threshold list. And we talked last time about what that means, that there were, generally speaking, the failures to deliver were over the threshold, something like 0.5% of the float. Is that right?
Right. So to qualify for this threshold list, you have to have fails not over 0.5% of the float, but then they also have to persist for 5 days at the clearing corporation. So that's the key thing. So if you're on there for 3 days and you come off, you'll never appear in the threshold list. You have to stay there for 5 days, and then you go on this list of stores.
And some of these companies are, like you said, Netflix was on there for almost 2 years.
Absolutely. Netflix,
Chipotle, Krispy Kreme,
Chipotle,
some of the most delicious fast food out there.
Krispy Kreme was on for 640 days. Lazy Boy, 586. Chipotle, 544 days.
I don't know about you. I love sitting.
Right, I assure you they do
America.
too.
This is terrorism.
They're attacking America. Well, the interesting thing about the threshold list is they don't make it easy to get the data. So they post it. I think we talked last time about how the fails data, technically those are owned by DTCC. And so the SEC argued that they had difficulty providing this to us. So they had to get special permission, and now we're lucky to have the fails data. Well, the threshold list data is the exchange data. So it's the listing exchange data. So not the trading exchange, it's the listing exchange. Mm-hmm. And there are technically 5 that are post this. The big ones to focus on are NYSE and NASDAQ. But the NASDAQ data, to get the NYSE data, you have to write a special script to web scrape because they don't allow you to bulk download it. The NASDAQ data you can at least bulk download, but the NYSE data you can't. You have to write special script in Python or some language to be able to scrape all these text files. And even then, they have memory hold the files pre-2007 and before. So it was fortunate that I have those in my records to get the 2007 files. But they make it very, very hard to get these historical lists from.
Yeah, and we just talked about the companies, the ETFs. It's just insane. I mean, it's honestly staggering. Years and years of threshold list appearances.
And of course, XRT is the big winner there. And XRT, almost 1,700 days on the threshold list. As we discussed last time, the idea is that you can't get short. Some ticker in there is hard to borrow in the XRT, the S&P Retail 100. So you short the ETF, but somehow you have a long position on the basket of the other 99 stocks. So you're synthetically short that one ticker through this creation of this product. I'm convinced that's what's going on here. Otherwise, why would it happen? What's especially weird is that the SEC is so silent about ETFs on the threshold list. It was
agreed.
If you go back in time, this period of 2005 to 2008, which was the pregnant moment for a lot of this change, there were lots of people yelling about all the hundreds of tickers on the threshold list. But now the SEC has just been very, very silent since 2009. They have no interest in resolving this matter, sadly.